Hey guys, I am excited to come to you today to talk about the book Hair Story, Untangling the Roots of Black Hair in America. A couple months ago, as you know from my previous video, Juju and I went to the library and I had checked out a few books for myself. I've already done a review on Naked, and at the time I thought that that was one of the greatest books. I really enjoyed it. Well, Hair Story just totally exceeded my expectations, and I'm really excited to do this review for you guys. It is going to be a review slash discussion because there's so much information in this book, and there are so many things that resonated with me that I figured I'll do a book review and then just talk a little bit about how the book impacted me. When I checked this book out, I didn't read what it was supposed to be about. I just saw the title, and was like, wow, this sounds like it'll be interesting. Let me check it out. Well, I loved it so much that I decided to order my own copy, and I got it on Amazon. And I actually have the revised edition. This is what it looks like. So this is the revised and updated edition. This actually goes from 1400 to 2013. It references some very, very current things. I really, really, really want to do this justice, and there's a lot that I can cover, so I'm gonna try to cover as much as I can, but keep the video concise and not too long because I want to keep you guys engaged. The authors are Ayanna D. Bird and Lori L. Tharps. They did an amazing job. My expectation when I got this book was it was just going to be a book that talked about hairstyles from like an iconic through the years type pictorial, just like an editorial type view of hair and fashion and how it tied into the decades. This was like a mini history lesson. It's a really easy read. It's about 230 pages, and it's 9 chapters. And within each chapter, there are smaller sub chapters that talk about different topics. The first chapter just blew me away, and I have to say that I'm surprised that as a grown woman I didn't know some of the things about my ancestors that I feel I should have known. And it just makes me think about the things that they don't teach you at school, teach you in school. So I'm going to take the responsibility to teach my kids about our ancestors and that we were more than slaves. So right off the bat, that's one of the things that I got out of this book. And I also want to say that this hair journey has morphed into something bigger than just my hair. I want to become a better person. I want to be a more informed person. So it's not just about my hair. Like, checking out this hair book has led to something totally different, a discovery of self, a discovery of my ancestors. Okay, so back to the book. It starts out in West Africa, and the book talks about how our ancestors prized, adored, and cherished our hair. They styled their hair in these elaborate styles, and hair was used, and I made some notes because I want to get it right. So hair was used to tell a person's marital status, age, religion, ethnic identity, wealth, and rank in their community. So hair was really, really important. If someone was allowed to do your hair, that person was highly regarded in the community. It was a skill, and it was very, it was an honor tradition to be able to do someone's hair. So I thought that was a great way to start out the book. So then we come to the slave trade, and the book does acknowledge that yes, our ancestors did participate in the slave trade as far as like human trading in humans, But we have to acknowledge that it was an exploitation. Like, yes, they traded humans for other goods and services, but I don't think they understood the capacity of what was going on over here in the New World. So it talks about that, and then it talks about the Middle Passage. And one thing that I wanted to read to you guys, just to kind of give a representation of how deep this is. I'm going to read something from the book. Given the importance of the hair to an African, having the head shaved was an unspeakable crime. And then it goes on. The shaved head was the first step Europeans took to erase the slave's culture and alter the relationship between the African and his or her family. Separating individuals from family and community on the slave ships during the Middle Passage furthered their alienation from everything they had ever known. Arriving without their signature hairstyles, Mandingos, Fulanis, Igbos, and Ashantis entered the New World just as the Europeans intended, like Anonymous Chattel. This goes hand in hand, and I'm not going to get too detailed with it, but Raven-Symoné recently did her interview with Oprah, and she said that she doesn't believe in labels. I think that is absolutely ridiculous, and this right here justifies why I feel the way that I feel. If you think about our ancestors and what they had to go through and what they were stripped of without any choice, why would you go walk around and say you don't want to be labeled as something? And I will give you guys a story. Me personally, I prefer to be called black. I don't mind being referred to as African American. Not that I don't want to be called African American because I don't want to be associated with Africans. You can look at my skin and tell I'm black. My ancestors were slaves. I mean, there's no denying that. It's just that's how I was brought up, to be black and to be proud. I remember my parents just always taught me to be black and to be proud. I remember I was about 5 years old, and my grandmother asked me, "What color are you?" And I said, "I'm brown." She said, "No, you're black." I said, "No, I'm brown," very proudly. I even went and got a brown crayon. I said, "No, I'm brown," held up the brown crayon. She said, "No, you're black." From that day forward, I was black, and I was proud. So I don't understand how you can walk through this world and say you don't want to be labeled as something, and then in the same breath say, well, I relate with this group and I relate with this group. So moving on, the book goes and talks about, of course, slavery, and it gets into the whole house slave, the field slave. It gets into light skin, dark skin, and of course it gets into hair texture. And one of the other interesting things that the book talks about is how our ancestors had to work 6 days a week in the fields, most of the time in the hot sun, for 12 to 15 hours. They didn't have time to worry about their hair. So the men either shaved it, wore straw hats, and the women covered it up. So if you don't have time to comb your hair, especially our texture hair, it's going to get matted. It's going to get nappy. So that's why the word nappy has that negative connotation. But I do believe it is a word that we can now embrace and say, yes, I'm happy to be nappy, because now we have our natural texture and we're maintaining it. And it also goes, it points out why we don't know how to take care of our hair, because it hasn't been that long that we've gone from slavery to civil rights, where we wanted to be accepted and get jobs, so we were perming and pressing our hair. So that's why we don't know how to take care of our hair in our natural state. So this book just lays it all out there, and it's up to the individual who reads the book to be able to put the puzzles together, the puzzle pieces together. But again, that's why we don't know how to take care of our natural hair. And like I said previously, the reason we were pressing and relaxing our hair is because we were going through Reconstruction. We were allowed to work. We wanted to be accepted, so we had to be presentable. Well, what was presentable? European standards, straight hair. So that's why we were straightening our hair. Another thing, and I guess people deal with things differently, And as I was reading this book, it just made me think of things from my childhood that I had forgotten. But it talks about the whole light skin and dark skin thing. And even to this day, I kind of have, I don't want to say it's a complex, but I don't consider myself to be light skinned. I feel like I have some color, so I'm not light skinned. And a personal story that I have is I remember I was probably about 10 or 11, and I won't get into details, but I was with some people. And I remember an adult pointing me out, and the adult was like, "Oh, she's the little dark skinned one." And I felt some type of way, not because she referred to me as dark skinned, but I understood even as a child when she said the little dark skinned one, she said it like being dark skinned was a bad thing. And I think I internalized that. And going forward, I just was like, I'm going to be proud to be dark skinned. Even to this day, like, my family will tell me, "You're not dark skinned, you're light skinned." And I'm like, "No, I'm not light skinned," because I feel like I have color. And I just go back to that moment where that adult referred to me as the little dark one in a negative way. And I said, I'm never going to be ashamed to be the dark one. So that's where this whole complex that our people has comes from. So we need to start discussing these things, and in order for us to discuss them, we need to be informed and we need to be educated. And this book offers a wealth of information. It gives so much insight and it gives so many resources. I've highlighted in my book, I don't even know if you'll be able to see it, but I've made highlights in the book of things that I want to remember, things that I want to reference, and books that I want to go ahead and read. And the book, when it starts to talk about the early 20th century, it mentions, of course, all of us have heard of and know Madam C.J. Walker. But there's another woman who started a company before Madam C.J. Walker, and the book explains why she's not as famous as Madam C.J. Walker. But her last name is Malone, and I believe her first name is Annie. But Miss Malone started the Poro Company, and I believe, I don't want to get it wrong, so you'll have to read the book. But her last name was Malone, and she started the Poro Company. And she actually, when she started the company, it's kind of like the Mary Kay whole model, where you hire people and they sell your product. And the more you sell, the higher up you move in a company. So I learned that from the book. And the book also talks about how, I guess in like the 50s and the 60s, how African Americans started their own companies, and then the larger corporations, mainly white owned corporations, would buy them out and they would start selling our products. And it's funny how things are cyclical, because that's what's happening now with this whole natural hair care boom. These smaller companies are getting purchased by these larger corporations. And I know a lot of you have also heard of Carol's Daughter, and you guys are aware that that is being sold in Target and Sephora and many other places. And she's been around for a long time, because I remember going to New York years and years and years ago, and I was so excited to visit one of her stores, and I bought one of the products. But she's been around a really long time. Well, she is still the face of Carol's Daughter, but she has some investors like Jay-Z and Mary J. Blige and Jada Pinkett Smith. But I believe the book said that the company was purchased by another larger private company. So she, like I said, she's still the face of Carol's Daughter, but she's not, from what I understood from the book, she's not the sole owner of it. But then it goes on to talk about the Afro and how it became like a political thing. And again, it was just the whole I'm black and I'm proud. And then it talks about weaves, and it talks about being natural, and it talks about YouTube. And one interesting thing I thought about the natural part was everybody's like, I'm natural, I'm natural, I'm natural. And I've even thought about this. Um, and you hear about these natural hair Nazis. And my thing is, you really can't talk down on somebody who has a relaxer, because if you're using conditioner, if you're using gel to manipulate your curls, okay, it's not a permanent chemical, but you're still using a chemical to manipulate your curl pattern to get it to do what you want. So you're no better than the person that has a relaxer. And we all just need to get along and embrace each other. If somebody wants to have a relaxer, that's their business. If somebody wants to wear a weave, that's their business. If somebody wants to wear a wig, that's their business. If somebody wants to do some extensions and some twists, that's their business. But I think the issue comes in when you ask that person, well, why do you have this and why do you have that? Is it because you feel like that's better? Then that's an issue. But you can't automatically say, oh, well, she has a relaxer, she's a seller, or she wants to be white. No, you can't do that. You need to take each individual and give them an opportunity to speak for themselves. And I'm going to try not to use this word anymore because I think it's derogatory, and that's creamy crack. It's just, it's not right. If somebody wants to relax, so that's their business. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, you use that creamy crack. You shouldn't be doing that. You need to be natural. You do what you want to do. It's your hair. My thing is, if you can maintain your hair and it can be healthy, relax, cool. If you can maintain your hair with a weave, cool. It's your business. You do what you want to do. One other thing that I wanted to mention about that whole Raven Simone interview is the labels thing. I just don't get that. I don't understand how people walk around and say, I don't want to be labeled. I don't believe in labels. You can't pick and choose what labels you're going to be called. So either you want to be labeled or you don't. So you want to be called a human, that's a label. A label identifies something. So you can't exist without having a label. I'm a mom, that's a label. I'm a wife, that's a label. I'm black, that's a label. And when people say I don't see color, well, if you don't see color, how can you respect me as a person and the legacy of my ancestors? And vice versa, how can I respect somebody if I don't see color? How can I respect their ancestors and the contributions that their ancestors made and their heritage and their culture if I don't see color? I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Now, when somebody says, I don't want to be labeled, and maybe they don't express it right, maybe they mean they don't want what they do to have to represent a whole race of people. And unfortunately, as a black person, that's just something that we have to deal with. This is really, really trivial, but a lot of you will agree with this. Like when we tip, well, when I tip, I feel like I have to tip a little extra because I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing my whole race. And I know that sounds crazy, but I know I'm not the only one that feels this way, because people already feel like, oh, well, they're black, so I'm not going to get a good tip. And it's like, wow, damn, like I have to, excuse me, but it's like, we have to tip extra just because we have to prove a point. Like, just because I'm black don't mean I'm not going to tip you. But I just think that whole label thing is crazy. You can't exist in a society. You can't respect each other's differences if you fail to recognize or acknowledge them. That's just crazy. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. But back to the book. So the book also talks about hair texture. So it talks about kinky hair, and it talks about curly hair, and of course it talks about mulattoes and how a lot of them would try to pass because sometimes mulattoes were automatically free. This is what the book says, and I'm sure I'm getting some stuff out of context, so forgive me for that. Like I said, I know that I have more research to do. But one telling sign was our hair. And that's the other beautiful thing about our hair. It's so versatile, but we're the only ones that get hair like this. Don't know other people's hair kink up like this. So love it, adore it. It's beautiful, it's unique. But yeah, it just was saying that that's one of the telling features. If someone was really, really fair skinned, if their hair has some kink to it, then they're not passing. And this brings me to another story unrelated to the book. But this was about 7 years ago. Me and a coworker was out to lunch with this guy that we work with, and she and I, both black, we were at dinner with this gentleman, really, really, really the sweetest person I ever met. We were at dinner, we were having a really, really, really good time. And I don't remember what it was he said, but he said something that only a black person would say. So me and the girl just looked at each other like, did he just say that? Like, he's not supposed to say that. So he was like, he saw the expressions on our faces. So he was like, you guys know I'm black, right? And we just sat there like, and he was like, yeah, I'm black. And we was like, oh my God. I felt so, I didn't know how to feel because I never met anyone like that. But there's so much information here. So I really hope you guys check this out and read the book.
I get busy on them.